Hey guys, welcome back. Okay, look, this isn't a perfect game by any stretch, like it has some serious jank, some pacing issues, and some mechanics that definitely show their age. But despite all of that, it has this charm and a sense of identity that you just don't see from modern AAA studios anymore. So let's start with its narrative, cause like the lore in this game is so incredibly extra, and I absolutely love it for that. So basically at the top of everything you have this charred council, these three giant flaming heads that kinda like enforce the laws of the universe. Their entire job is to maintain the balance between three kingdoms, the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of hell, and the kingdom of man. And cause like angels and demons are naturally predisposed to killing each other until the end of time, the council stepped in and forced a truce, bound by 7 seals. And the rule was simple. Humanity needs time to evolve, and when they're finally strong enough, the 7 seals will be broken, kicking off the end war to decide the ultimate fate of creation. And to like make sure nobody breaks the rules, the council has these 4 horsemen of the apocalypse: war, death, fury, and strife. These guys are like the council's elite enforcers, ridiculously OP badasses who answer to absolutely no one. So anyways, the game kicks off with the ultimate clusterfuck. You drop right into modern day Earth and the apocalypse has started way ahead of schedule. Fire is raining from the heavens, angels are crashing into skyscrapers, demons are killing civilians in the streets, and right in the middle of this mess lands our boy, War. But like War is the first and the only horseman to answer the call. He shows up, whips out a sword the size of a surfboard, and immediately gets to work, killing anything that stands in his way. But like things go sideways almost instantly. War bumps into Abaddon, the archangel commanding heaven's armies, who is actually terrified to see a horseman cause, as it turns out, the 7th seal has actually not been broken at all. Before War can even process this, a huge-ass demon named Straga bursts out of the asphalt, grabs Abaddon, and crushes him to death. War tries to fight Straga, but he mysteriously loses all of his powers, gets his ass handed to him, and gets sent back to the Charred Council for a trial. And the council is pissed, like they accuse War of going rogue, prematurely triggering the apocalypse, siding with hell, and causing the complete extinction of humanity. So facing execution, War demands one chance to return to Earth, find the real culprits, and clear his name. The council agrees, but cause like they're total dicks, they strip him of his powers and shackle him to a sadistic shadow entity called the Watcher, voiced brilliantly by Mark Hamill, doing basically his Joker voice but with a bit more edge.
Better not bare your teeth. Understand? Or should I teach you to play dead?
So anyways, War returns to Earth a century later and the place is totally fucked. Humanity is gone, and the planet has been turned into a demon-infested wasteland ruled by someone known only as the Destroyer. This is where the game turns into a straight-up revenge story. So here you meet Vulgrim, a shady demonic merchant, and Samael, a demon lord who's locked up for rebelling against the Destroyer. Samael then tasks you with hunting down the 4 chosen, Tiamat, the Griever, the Stygian, and Silitha, and ripping out their hearts so he can regain his power and grant you access to the Black Throne. And along the way you meet Ulthane, a giant hammer-wielding blacksmith. And like the character dynamic here is surprisingly great, mostly because War is a humorless, honorable tank who just refuses to put up with anyone's BS. It's incredibly refreshing to play a protagonist who just doesn't care about the politics and only wants to smash things. Anyways, as the story progresses, it kinda drops a huge plot twist that genuinely elevates the whole experience. So it turns out that early Apocalypse was actually orchestrated by Abaddon himself. Like he was terrified that heaven was losing the eternal conflict, so he conspired with Azrael, the angel of death, to break the first 6 seals early. The plan was to force a preemptive strike on hell and then use Ulthane's blacksmithing skills to remake the seals and cover up the crime. But Abaddon being killed by Straga in the prologue completely ruined the plan. And like when Abaddon was dragged down to hell, he was given a choice by a mysterious dark entity: serve in heaven or rule in hell. Being a coward, he chose to rule, becoming the Destroyer himself. Okay, so after rescuing Azrael and forging the Armageddon blade, which is like the only weapon that can kill the Destroyer, War finally confronts him. And the final showdown is brutal, ending with War literally ripping Abaddon's wings off and stabbing him through the chest. But like the twist doesn't stop there. Uriel, an angelic commander who had sworn a death oath against War earlier in the game, honors a loophole by stabbing War in the back with the Armageddon blade. This fatal blow technically fulfills the death oath, but it also accidentally shatters the 7th seal, which had been hidden all along. And breaking this final seal instantly resurrects War, restoring his full power and freeing him from the Council's control. Uriel looks at War and asks if he intends to wage this new war against heaven, hell, and the Council all by himself. War turns around, looks at 3 meteors crashing from the sky and delivers this badass line, "No, not alone."
Not alone.
Okay, so everything in Darksiders is chunky and wildly exaggerated. Like the armor pieces are so huge, gauntlets look like heavy machinery, and this comic book approach to dark fantasy is exactly why I believe the game has aged so gracefully. So think back to the games coming out around 2010. The industry was absolutely obsessed with chasing this hyper-realistic, desaturated brown and gray aesthetic. And Darksiders has some of that too, but it's a bit vibrant and has heavily stylized anatomy to create a world that feels like a graphic novel. Joe Madureira, who's the co-founder of Vigil, had this philosophy of making the apocalypse look sexy and badass rather than depressing, and you can see it, like the world design is actually fantastic. Like you aren't just exploring generic dungeons, you're quite literally exploring the ruins of a modern Earth that has been terraformed by supernatural forces. So you fight through subway tunnels choked with demonic biomass, ruined skyscrapers overgrown with crystalline structures, and flooded city streets. And like the enemy designs are equally spectacular. The angels aren't your typical peaceful celestial being. They're heavily armored, aggressive zealots wielding energy weapons that look like something out of Halo. The demons also look terrifying, covered in horns and scales. So looking back at this game in 2026, the visual presentation still kinda pops. The stylized line work, the exaggerated proportions, and the sheer creativity of the enemy design carry the whole experience. Sure, some of the environmental geometry is a bit blocky, and you can definitely tell this was built for the Xbox 360 era, but the art direction is so strong that it just doesn't matter. And when you're riding your flaming horse and killing demons, it just looks amazing. It proves that a cohesive, stylized art direction will always, without exception, outlive raw graphical fidelity. Okay, so let's transition over to gameplay, and don't know if I said this earlier, but like Darksiders is a weird mix of Zelda and God of War, but I don't mean that in a bad way. It's essentially this hack and slash combo-driven combat mixed with some annoyingly long-ass puzzles. So the combat first, and you start off with Chaos Eater, your primary broadsword, and it feels very weighty and satisfying to swing. The combat system isn't quite as complex as something like Devil May Cry, nor is it pure button mashing. Like it sits in this really comfortable middle ground. You have your light and heavy attacks and a dodge with those invincibility frames. And over the course of the game you get access to secondary weapons that mix it up a bit. Like you get the Mercy pistol later on in the game, which is pretty cool, and you can also buy a scythe, which is amazing for crowd control. And you can like combine all of these together in combat, and when you deal enough damage, you can then do a God of War style finisher and it never gets old. You also have Wrath powers, which act as your magic spells, stuff like Blade Geyser, which shoots swords out of the ground, or Stone Skin, which increases your defense. And when things get really hairy, you can go in your Chaos form, which turns you in an invincible fiery demon for a few seconds. But like the combat is only half the equation here, the other half is this dungeon crawling structure, and honestly, I don't know how I feel about it. So like every area in the game acts as a self-contained dungeon complete with a unique puzzle-solving tool, a mini-boss, and a final boss. And like the game constantly hands you an arsenal of gadgets that open up new traversal and combat options. You get the Earth Caller, a horn that wakes up giant rock gates, the Crossblade, which is literally just the Zelda boomerang used to hit multiple targets, the Abyssal Chain, which is a literal hook shot used to swing across chasms or pull enemies toward you, and my personal favorite, the Voidwalker, which is quite literally the portal gun from Portal, functioning in almost the exact same way to solve spatial puzzles. And speaking of puzzles, this is where I feel like the game really drags. Cause like the puzzles in this game are so long, I mean like sometimes you go for 20 minutes without any fight cause like you're still doing a long ass puzzle. I don't know if it's a me problem or not, but yeah, let me know how do you guys feel about it. Anyways, I can't sit here and praise the mechanics without addressing the absolute disaster that is the Black Throne. Look, like every game has that one level that makes you want to rip your hair out, and for Darksiders it's the final area. Like it's a grueling, exhausting marathon of pure tedium. So the objective here is to free Azrael by redirecting 3 beams of light. And this requires solving a seemingly endless amount of portal puzzles using the Voidwalker. While portal mechanics are fun in short bursts, here it just drags on for an eternity. The pacing of the game absolutely grinds to a halt here, And to make matters worse, you gotta fight the exact same Guardian mini-boss 3 separate times with only slight variations. And just when you think you have survived the worst of it, the game pulls one final dirty trick on you. Before the final boss, you're kinda forced to backtrack across the entire game to collect 7 scattered shards of the Armageddon blade. While some might enjoy this excuse to revisit old areas with their fully upgraded arsenal, I felt like it was just artificial padding to stretch out the runtime. Anyways, despite these pacing issues, the core mechanics of exploration, combat, and puzzle solving remain pretty satisfying. Okay, so for a linear, story-driven action-adventure game, Darksiders offers a remarkably meaty experience. A standard playthrough will easily clock in at around 15 hours, assuming you take a little time to explore for hidden chests, wrath shards, and lifestone pieces. And for the completionists out there trying to max out every weapon and find every piece of the abyssal armor, that playtime can easily stretch closer to 20 hours. And when it comes to difficulty, I feel like the apocalyptic difficulty is the only way to play this game, cause on normal, the game is a bit of a cakewalk. Like you can just blindly button mash your way through most encounters without really learning the intricacies of the combat system. So anyways, the overall combat loop is actually pretty fun when it all clicks. So, this game is like an artifact from an era when video games were allowed to just be focused experiences without the baggage of battle passes and live service grindfest. Yes, few areas are a bit tedious with puzzles that overstay their welcome. And yes, the final fetch quest for the Armageddon blade feels like a cheap tactic to extend the runtime. But honestly, these flaws are completely eclipsed by the sheer fun of the combat, decent environmental design, and a surprisingly compelling narrative. And for anyone looking to revisit the golden age of action-adventure titles, Darksiders is an absolute mandatory playthrough. Anyways, thanks for watching guys, and I'll catch you all in the next one.